live stream says it's live, so that is probably our cue.
Is there a link?
Yeah, Shaman should be providing a link. Okay, I think it's live. So why don't we kick off from here? So okay, welcome back, everyone. This is now coinly called Attention Market, podcast hosted by Kain, interviewing some of the best people that we've got in crypto, talking about market news, market relevant knowledge, and anything else that we find interesting. So we've got today Mert that is joining us, who is the CEO of Helios, the #1 Solana validator with 13 million staked SOL, which is $1.7 billion worth of things, beating out Mike Novogratz's Galaxy and Coinbase for the top spot. Mert is well known for supporting the bald community of crypto founders. Rumor has it that Mert had a full head of hair before he went to go and work for Brian at Coinbase. So I'm not sure about that one. We're going to have to double check that. And Mert also gets kudos for Kain's beard, even under the extremely poor guidance of no trimming for 3 months. So welcome, Mert.
That's quite the intro. Thank you. And yeah, I actually did have hair heading into Coinbase. In fact, we have a Slack channel with Coinbase right now, like Helios, and there's an emoji from the Coinbase days where it's me with hair and it's just flashing up and down, and it's called like Mert hype. So it is what it's called.
Nice.
Very exciting. And you just got back from Korea, is that right? Or are you still there?
Yeah, no, I was in Korea, and then I was in Malaysia for a bit, and then now I'm in Singapore, where I was too scared to smuggle Zins over the border, so I kept those in Malaysia. But I was able to get Nicorette gum from the pharmacy, which, the law is you can't chew gum or do nicotine substances, but you can chew nicotine gum. And so, there's some interesting
weird arbitrage there.
Yeah.
How did you find Korean Blockchain Week? We had some people go and they said it was insane. They said it was one of the best conferences they've ever been to.
I thought so. It was my first time in Asia, like entirely. I've never been east of Dubai, which I mean is technically Asia, but it's not actual Asia. And I thought it was good. Certainly a lot of talented builders. I actually thought the Story Protocol guys impressed me more than I figured they would have.
I gotta double click on that. Walk me through that one.
Yeah, I mean, at first I didn't think too much of like their let's say go to market on the fundraise announcement, because it was really just saying bear chain or Mana is bad, which is like, okay, well, let's talk about what you guys are building. But like they had some nice like exhibitions and like people actually already building things on top of the chain. They had good partnerships. The founders were super passionate. Like you can kind of just tell when you've been around for a little bit which founders are kind of just BSing, which founders genuinely believe what they're building. And like they seem to really believe what they're building. And so I thought that was cool. So cool guys. And then the rest of the conference, yeah, I mean, a lot of side events. I posted a review of Seoul or Korea, which went a little viral, especially in Korean communities, and that they got quite mad at me. And I didn't even say anything that bad. I said something like, good food, good weather, good aesthetics and tech and internet and stuff. And then the bad was like, well, first of all, the English apps don't work. Like Google Maps doesn't work. Uber barely works. So you have to use their local shit, which is not good. Like those apps are not good. That's just a fact. And then I said, people don't speak English, so it's like harder. And then everybody got offended at this. Like, I didn't say you should speak English. I said people don't speak English, so that if you're a Westerner,
how dare you?
A harder time.
How dare you say facts? What is wrong with you? Why?
Yeah, and they're like, well, you should learn Korean. And I'm like, learn Korean for a 2-day conference? What the fuck? I'm not like, Vitalik or some shit. And I did learn Korean, by the way. I did learn Korean, like enough to like order a beer and stuff. And, it's not enough. And then I also said, not sure if I just look super weird or people are just like relatively racist here, because like everywhere I looked, everybody was just staring at me, and I was like, and my girlfriend, who's Korean, was like, that's because you look like a gang member terrorist, not a gang member or a terrorist,
dude.
a gang member and a terrorist.
It's because they're like, oh, this is the guy that's the mobile phone guy that's powering all of our infrastructure here. So he's famous in Korea.
This is the helium
overall, I
guy,
liked it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's that guy that
People made that
deploys
mistake
all the
too.
infrastructure for mobile networks.
It's what I do. I was just doing that now.
So did you move to Dubai because of you'd fit in more with the aesthetic there, given the background that your girlfriend gave you that feedback, or what was the move like?
Well, actually, I wouldn't. I would say Canada is starting to look a lot like me, actually. Just due to, I can say it. I'm Turkish. Well, no, it's because I think, well, first of all, Canada sucks. Like, Canada is the worst place on earth, approximately speaking, and like bad taxes, bad weather, bad medical care, bad food, no culture. I can go on. Horrible to businesses, not good for crypto. Bad at sports, not good at anything.
You should tweet this and see how it goes. Are
I tweet this all
Canadians
the
even
time.
on Twitter?
They usually agree with me when I tweet this, and then I actually have a bunch of followers who are not in crypto who just follow me for Canadian hate, which I think is interesting. Oh, and get this is the worst part, and I think this exists in other countries too, but not the same extent as Canada. But like, if you're a founder in Canada, and let's say you have a company in the US, like a Delaware C Corp, and you have shares in the company as a founder, obviously, they tax you when you exit the country as if you sold your entire shares in the company. So whatever the valuation you have, let's say it's like 200 million, you're taxed at whatever percent of that you own, which you don't have. It's on paper to exit the country. So I think that's bordering on criminality.
It's funny. I'm in a group, and there's, for whatever reason, a bunch of people from the UK in there, and they were talking about how the UK just like jacked up capital gains taxes crazily, but then they don't tell you when they're going to implement it. They just like drop it on you, which I'm sure Australia must do stuff like that as well, right? Where all Commonwealth countries scamming people with taxes, but yeah, they were all freaking out. They're like, you can't even leave because they're like, hey, we're jacking your taxes, and if you try and leave, we're going to tax you even more. So it's like, I guess I'm trapped here.
Yes, exactly. They're trying to trap me. So
what does Adam Cochran think about your Canadian takes? How do you get along? Do you get along with him?
I hate that guy. I genuinely do not like him, and like I like a lot of people. I'm aggressive, but like him, I just don't like. I can go on, but
there are events for that. If you don't like somebody,
wait, like an anti-Adam Cochran event? Is that
no? I meant like a karate.
Oh, karate combat. Oh my god, you versus Adam Cochran. I would pay so much money for that. I would pay a lot of money for that fight.
They actually asked me to fight Karate Combat, messaged me on Twitter a while ago. I don't think it'd be very fair. I did compete in Muay Thai for like 6 years, so like I don't want to.
Wow. Yeah, right.
I'm not sure.
Well, it's funny because I'm fighting David Hoffman, right? And so I've been going back and looking at some of the fights, like going back to like IFC 1, which was like 2022 or whatever, right? And it's pretty crazy. There's like a big range. Like the first couple of IFCs, it was like people that were genuinely like into martial arts who happened to be like weird, like C-tier influencers. They were like mainly finding people who are into martial arts that like have some tangential thing with crypto. But there's one fight, which I don't know if you've seen it. It's this guy, Crypto Crow. The dude's 7 feet tall. And he fights this guy, Moon Daddy. I hadn't heard of either of these guys, right? So it's a 7 foot tall guy fighting a 6'5" guy, and he just absolutely murders him. Like, it was so crazy. So I said to Larry, actually, I was like, well, there you go. Now you've got someone that you could fight, someone your own size. He didn't respond though. So. I don't think
Larry
I don't
from
think
the
he's down.
block.
Yeah, Larry from
Yeah.
the block. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah,
giant.
I mean the earlier fights are fucked. I've seen a guy like crucifix position, call it crucifix position, and then just elbow him to the face until he passed out. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
They used to wear shoes too, and kick people in the face with shoes back in the day.
Was this not the IFC? This is like the actual karate combat, right? The proper, because that's been
Just
going
like
for
the first UFC's.
That sounds like
First,
first UFC. Yeah, that sounds like the really early days where it was like last man standing. You could have like 3 fights in the same night. You could either win the fight in 10 seconds or win the fight in like 3 rounds, and then you have to fight again. It was brutal. Yeah, it was like there was no weight classes. There was no rules.
So you used to do Muay Thai. We should get in and train in Singapore. I need some sparring.
Sure, yeah. I did
some
Muay
sparring.
Thai, computer wrestling, rugby, football. Just that's where I used to get my anger out before Twitter. Now I can't do that. So I'm like, fuck, I must type something.
So what are the rules for your and David's fight? Is there kicks to the head? Are you allowed to elbow?
Yeah. I don't think elbow. I'm pretty sure that you aren't allowed to use it. Like there's slightly different rules for the IFC versus karate combat, like the pro fighters. And I'm pretty sure in the influencer fight club, there's no elbows. I'm pretty sure. I hope I'm not wrong about that. Knees are fine. But yeah, no elbows. I'm pretty sure. So we'll see. My body is so sore right now. It's crazy. I've got just like so many little like issues, like bruises on my, like I just cracked my knee into someone yesterday, and like my whole knee's like, yeah, it's been an experience for sure.
What is the fight? Is that permissionless?
That's a permissionless, in Utah. Yeah. So it's like less than a month now. We're almost 30 days away.
Oh, wow. Well,
it's pretty crazy. We've got like 3 of the biggest conferences all within like under 4 weeks of each other.
Yeah. Post summer.
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be not a fun flight somehow from Singapore to Salt Lake. I don't know how that's going to work.
I'm going via New York, so I'm going to be at mainnet first.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So Ryan
Selkis is not going to be impressed about you not including mainnet in one of the top conferences of the year. They're just skipping over that one.
Hey, Ryan's not there anymore. It's fine.
Yeah. I feel like he might still take it personally. I don't know. I just have a slight feeling that he might not appreciate Igor talking shit about mainnet, but we'll see. You might have a fight challenge on your hands there, Igor.
I do not want to fight him. He's also a giant. He'd be over 100 kilos. That would be a tough fight.
He's big.
I'd have to kick him in the leg as hard as I could, and then try to dance around. Speaking of conferences, how many new L2s did you meet in Korean Blockchain Week?
I'll actually count. I think maybe 6, something like that. Now, some of them are like weird in that they're frameworks for launching L2s. Some of them are like, it's not quite obvious what they should be called. And then, of course, right when I was at the conference, Austin and Kyle came up with network extensions instead of calling them L2s, which got everybody mad. And so now everybody's confused whatever the fuck to call anything. But yeah, there was quite a few. There was even some L1s that I hadn't heard of. Maybe they're just in the Asian markets or something. So yeah, certainly a lot of projects I've never heard of in the Asian sphere, let's say, of the world.
Well, Breakpoint's coming up. So I know you might have a little bit of alpha around what we should expect there.
Well, it won't be like a regular conference in that there's no panels. It is all debates and very short, like 2 to 5 minute product keynotes and like rapid fire, so people don't get bored and don't need context. There's also fireside chats, events. I'm doing one with Toli to close out the first day. And then the one interesting thing about Breakpoint conferences is that there's no side events during the conference, like the time of the talks themselves. Like generally ECC, for example, the conference basically didn't exist and it was all side events. But Breakpoint's like the opposite, where everything happens, let's say after the talks are over. In terms of alpha, actually, I don't think they trust me, so they don't really tell me because I'll just tweet it. But I think, well, I mean, there's going to be like some news about some network upgrades that I think will be meeting people's deepest desires that they've been waiting for a while. So I would tune into the Fire Dancer talks specifically because those are going to be
what's
pretty
the coordination mechanism for ensuring that there's no side events during the talks? How do you guys?
Oh, there isn't one. It's either Solana people are just too challenged to coordinate and do Ubers during the conference, or the programming is so good that people are just like, okay, well, we should probably see these because they're interesting talks, and then we can do something after. I mean, I'm sure there will be side events or something, but I doubt the turnout will be great.
Yeah, nice.
I find the events crazy these days. There's like Token is meant to have 20,000 people come into the arena over the 2-day period, and those people presumably the majority will stay for Breakpoint. So it's crazy to me that like you have these 2-day events which attract more people than typical users on any given L1. That's certainly changed over the last 5 years. I remember going to CoinDesk in 2018. This is back when Ripple was still throwing parties.
That was the worst conference in history in like Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember at one point I was walking down one of the hallways, right? And it was like, late ICO period, right? So like the ICOs were basically dead. But it was like the people who'd like heard that you could grift people, but it turned up like a little bit too late. And at one point, and like old suits, and I was like walking down this hallway with someone, and it was like a wall of suits walking towards us in the opposite direction. And I was just like, this is dark times. Like, what is going on here?
It was crazy. That was the time when you had the biggest L1s, so like Cardano, Ripple throwing insanely big parties. Snoop Dogg came to the Ripple party.
Someone. I think that was actually an exchange, if I remember correctly. One of the exchanges through that party with Snoop Dogg. Yeah.
I can't even imagine a Cardano party. There's no amount of money you could pay me to go to one of those.
Yeah. The thing is, it was full. It was packed out. So conferences have really won over the last 5 years. But I don't know if the user base has entirely. There seems to be a really big difference between actual people that use crypto on chain and people that attend these conferences. Like, do you speak to any real builders? Do you speak to many real founders that you bump into rather than actually like specifically tailoring a meeting for them? Like, do you bump into any of those guys when you're there, both of you?
I would say yes. Like, I mean, you go to a side event, right? For, I don't know, like say Brussels, right? Like Mert and I caught up at the Berachain event, right? So like, of course, you're going to go to an event that's, hosted by a team that you're interested in and meet some of the people and what have you. At the conference itself though, like, no, right? But I mean, that maybe speaks to ECC being like so side event focused. I'm really curious. Like, this is my first Solana conference. And so like, I was actually just talking to Bex, who runs PR for me and has done for like 4 years. And I was like, this is going to be a really interesting experience. Like going to a Solana conference, like I have a feeling it's going to be quite different vibe, like different groups of people, different, so I'm eagerly awaiting whatever is in store for me in Singapore. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think they sold more breakpoint tickets this year than the past years combined. So this will be a big one.
Wow.
They productionize it very well. Like the foundation events team is pretty world class if you've been to like an actual Solana event. So it's the best. I mean, people think I'm biased when I am, but it's objectively the best conference of the year in my view. In terms of like real users, founder signal, I would say at conferences that's generally pretty skewed depending on who you are. People generally come up to me and just want to pitch some sort of startup while I'm calling my dad or something. So that happens a lot. And so don't do that, please, if you're listening. But then there's good side events with like, they're a bit more curated, with people who actually have like pretty interesting insights and stuff. So it's a hit or mix. But I would say there certainly exists. Like there's a lot of interesting, especially on Solana, you'll notice like the big difference is the conferences are much more application and product focused as opposed to infrastructure focused. Like when I went to ECC, there was like 1,000 talks on interoperability and intents or not intents, but like infrastructure, pre-confirmations, different types of rollups. Solana, you'll probably get like 2 or 3 of those max, and then everything else is just like, here's stable coins, here is blinks, here is like UX, etc. So it's much more, it's much less infra focused.
We were
here's a question for you, just on that, right? Like, okay, you're walking around, there's 20,000 people in Singapore walking around, right? And of course there's, a lot of high profile people, founders, angels, VCs, whatever, right? But like someone happens to be within 50 feet of you and they see you and they have no presence on crypto Twitter, they don't have a network yet, right? Like how does that person pitch you? What's the way that someone could come up and pitch you in a way that would be acceptable?
Yeah, I think having done way too many of these in the past few years now, there's a few things. I think one thing that's super underrated is like somebody's like genuine passion for what they're talking about and like how much depth of knowledge they have in what they're discussing. Because generally when somebody pitches me a Solana thing, I'll be able to ask like a specific question that I know the answer to, and I can kind of see how they respond to that to see if they actually really know what they're talking about. And often case it's like there's a lot of gaps there.
Yeah.
And so I think like a founder who really understands this domain and has genuine like energy, like if you watch like a Steve Jobs or any of these founders talk about what they're building, they don't treat it like oh, well, we're looking for VC money. They treat it like we're going to build like the best thing possible. If you want to join us, etc. Like you can kind of tell there's a subtle difference that you can kind of maybe tune your, if you're an investor, you kind of you tune it over time. And then obviously like one of the things I look for, which it's weird I have to say this, but a working anything, like a working MVP or product or demo at least. Because oftentimes you will say, look, I have this idea, it's the greatest idea, and we're gonna just do this, but this, and then add this other thing. And I'm like, okay, like when are you going live? It's like, we're looking to race first, and it's like, no, like get some fucking users and ship something first. Not that obviously doesn't work for all types of products. Like for, I don't know, if you're doing like Uber or something, that probably would be harder, but not many people are building Uber. Most of the people are building software, and with software, you can easily get something working, ship something, get a few users, get some paying users at least. Like that's what would really make me pay attention, which is like, hey, we shipped an MVP, we have paying users, and then that coupled with domain knowledge, that would really pique my interest no matter who you are. And it's what we did with Helios as well. Like we self-funded for a little bit, built the APIs ourselves, and hosted everything ourselves, got some paying customers, and then started going to VCs.
But also like maybe pivot's the wrong word, but like my understanding from kind of seeing some of the stuff that you've written and what you've said is that like finding product market fit required a little bit of like nuance about the direction of where you go, right? And like what exactly are you offering and to whom and et cetera. So, you know, like, but you can't really find that out until you actually get in the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's super. I mean, it's very rare to get product market fit like right away on your first idea to production. Like that's, I don't know. I haven't really seen it many times unless it's just like a copy paste of something else on a different chain with tokens or something. But that's where the founder's domain knowledge comes in, where it's like for an early stage thing, it's really about two things. Like Marketing Andreessen has a post on this, which is like, is it about product? Is it about market? Or is it about team? Because he defines product market fit in that like blog post many years ago. And he says the most important thing is market, meaning that a really good market will even make a shitty product, like it will still pull it. You can kind of see this with like some of the earlier releases of the most famous apps had absolutely awful UX at first, but like they had a really good market. And so you couple a good market with a good team that you think can basically understand the user and the domain that they're operating in. And that ironically, or maybe paradoxically, turns out to be more important than product at first. But then you need to make sure the product catches up. Otherwise, you'll be surpassed, obviously.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think one interesting thing for me when I get pitched, and I don't mind being pitched at a conference, right? If someone's like, holy shit, like, here's my chance, right? To, you know, if they, for whatever reason, wanted to pitch me, right? And I just happen to be standing there, it's like, okay, cool. But I do find that there is a fine line between like passion and someone just like brain dumping on you. Do you know what I mean? Yes. It's like without any qualification, you know, if I turn up to you and I'm like, hey, you know, you're the guy that I want to talk to because I'm, you know, I've got some crazy solution for like how we're going to land transactions on Solana. Okay, like you've qualified that you're the right person to talk. But if it's just like, oh, you know, Mert, he writes angel checks, right? Let me talk to you about my, you know, weird gaming startup or something like that, right? And then I'm going to like sit there and like tell you a whole bunch of stuff about games and why this thing's going to be great. And it's like, it's a monologue, right? Like there needs to be some give and take. And I find the people who stop to actually ask the question of like, do you care about, you know, are you interested in this? Do you know about this? Like, you know, to try and find some connection there, that it tends to land a lot better. But most of the time, it's just a monologue. It's like, I have recorded this speech and you were in front of me and I'm going to give it to you. Yeah.
Those are the worst ones and probably the most common ones in my experience.
Yeah.
They'll talk about like the history of something that I've never heard of, about some other thing I don't care about. And I'm like, and then I'll say like, okay, so like, how can I help? Like I'll have to cut them off. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you want to do that, just be super precise. And I mean, if you're precise, your users will understand it more anyways. So like it always helps to actually be able to articulate your ideas or products in as few words as possible.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because like there have been many times where, and this is the minority of times, but still I can think of a lot of times where someone's said, hey, you know, I want to pitch you this thing. And they start talking about it. And I'm like, I've never even thought about this. Never even thought about it. It's not interesting to me, but they find a way to hook you where they're like, did you know there's this market inefficiency? And I'm like, all right, now I'm interested, right? Like, let's talk about, I don't care what market it is. If you tell me that the market's wrong in some way and like you've seen this and you're going to, you know, find a way to exploit it, that at a very principled level, I'm interested in, right? And, you know, you can kind of hook my interest pretty easily there. So I do think that like, you know, there is a level of knowing your audience as well, right? And like, you know, if you go to Singapore with the plan of like pitching Eric Voorhees something as a random guy, right? Like you better know your shit when you walk up to him. You better know how you're going to hook him. And if you're lucky enough to stumble across him, like, you know, you should be ready to go, right? Versus I've been practicing the same canned speech in front of the mirror and it doesn't matter who turns up in front of me. I'm just going to just bang, hit them.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I can keep going on about this, but like the other thing is like, do not interrupt like a conversation that's like happening. I'll be talking like totally and then people will, and it's like, please just give us like a second. Or
Yeah.
like the worst is I don't know how I feel about this, but it's like the lurk, where it's like you're like side to side by somebody talking, and this person's like just outside of you, so you can see them in your peripheral, but they're just like waiting and they're like listening to everything you're saying, and I'm like, it's so weird. Like, just come back. Yeah.
I mean, look, you know, it's challenging, right, as well, because like so many people in crypto are you know, a little aspy, right? Like not the most socially aware. But I do think that like coming up and you know, reading the room as well, right? Like if you and I are having a deep conversation about beards, right? I'm getting beard coaching from you. Like probably don't just jump in and like bang, you know, like clearly there's something going on, right? But if we're just standing there, not really, you know, doing much, and it's like, hey, do you mind if I join you guys and you know, ask a couple of questions? I mean, that's the easiest way as well, right? To like get in, like, you know, ask someone. Like it shows that you are even paying attention to like the audience, right? Like you got to read the room, right? Like, hey, what do you think about this thing? Like if someone comes up to me and is like, hey, what do you think about this thing? And I'm like, I think it's nonsense. And they're like, well, that's what I'm building. And I'm like, well, it's funny, right? Like, okay, let's like, tell me why it's not nonsense then, right? Like, you know, why are L5s actually fine? Like pitch me on that, right? Like convince me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
How often do you guys get something that is truly novel rather than something that's been built elsewhere that just ends up in a different shape or a different morph? Like, you know, we're building Aave, but not quite Aave on Cosmos. Or how often do you actually get something that is truly differentiated, where you're like, actually, I've never ever heard of this concept before, like something not quite infrastructure, because you know for 10 years we've been building infrastructure that like hardly anyone has actually used. So when do you get the times when those people come up to you and it's truly something novel?
Rarely. Like once every 6 months, maybe someone will be like, you know, I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like I was not even aware of this. You know, and it like I'm sure there's some people where that would not be surprising at all. There's a whole subculture of people who care about this thing, you know, but it hasn't reached like a critical mass of like narrative cut through. I'm sure. Look, it probably happens more in Solana, I would imagine, right? I'm sure you probably get some more novel stuff, people turning up. When you're talking about applications versus infra, it's easier for there to be some novel application than like some novel infrastructure, right? Like, okay. But even still, let's say someone did show up and say, hey, you know, we are, again, like building a new relayer or RPC infra with like some novel tweak on it. And like, it might even be a competitor to you guys, but it's like, okay, like, yeah, shoot your shot. Tell me what that is, right? Like probably some of the more novel things I've been pitched are people who come up and pitch me like a synthetic asset or perps dex or something like that, where I'm like, now we can go deep into this. Like, why do you think this trade-off makes sense, right? And you know, it's in like if someone just walked up and said, I'm building a perp dex, well, that's not novel. But if there's some like, you know, third layer weird incentive scheme that they're doing that is going to change how, you know, transactions settle. And again, this is picking your audience. Like my assumption is if you turned up to Mert and started, you know, pitching some weird derivatives thing, like it might not be that interesting, or you might not want to go too deep into it. And so it sounds kind of similar. And same thing, if you pitch me on some weird RPC infrastructure, I'm going to be like, it sounds the same as Helios. Like, what are you talking, you know, like, I'm not your guy, right? I don't know enough about this to be able to like go deep into the weeds with you.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well put. I think the more domain knowledge you have, the easier it is to notice the gaps and like identify novel things. Versus if it's like something just like DeFi, like I don't know too much about perps, to be honest, other than the basics. And so somebody's pitching me, well, this is this, but with this, and I'm like, I don't quite understand what that means. And so,
but yeah, our funding rate mechanism is based on a logarithmic curve, right? Like that's the difference. And like everyone else is using these linear funding rate mechanisms, and that doesn't work over long. And you're like, what are you like? What? Like,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, it happens a lot, especially with well, I would say, like, to answer your original question, I would say I actually get pitch novel ideas pretty consistently. I would say the ratio of novel to non-novel is obviously still pretty bad. Like for every, let's say I get 30 pitches per week, I would say probably like 25 of them are not novel. And 5 of them are, but it's like pretty consistently for like months. That's kind of always the ratio in my experience. But then again, it's also super hard to identify what's novel or not. That's kind of the weird thing about startup ideas, which is like the simplest ones that just sound super obvious and dumb actually turn out to be some of the best ones. And so it's super hard to tell. And then there's the thing of execute, like for example, FriendTech. I actually think FriendTech's a good idea. I still like it. Many people don't like me for this. I think it's a good idea. And it's like, okay, did the idea fail or did the execution fail? Like what happened there? Does the idea still work? I think the idea still works. And so people I tweet this a few times, but people in crypto have like this really weird mob mentality where it's like, oh, somebody did this before and lost money, therefore if you try it again you are a scammer. And it's like, that's not how it works, right? Like every idea that you've seen has been tried multiple times, most likely, out of the super novel ones. And that does not mean the other iteration will be worse. There's a book, How Innovation Works, by Matt Ridley, and it basically talks about the history of most products like steam engine, washing machines, etc. And they all kind of start like somebody tried it, didn't work. Somebody tried it some other year with like a slight tweak and it worked, or like it didn't work and then it just kept iterating that way. And so that happens pretty frequently. And then so you combine that with crypto's mob mentality because it's very socially driven, right? The prices are fundamentally speculative in most cases, not all. You combine those things and then people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to write this off. And then people are like, okay, I'm also going to write this off so I also can feel safe with my bet here.
Yeah, like Mert said, this is not a real thing. So, I don't believe it now, right? Like, and it's true. Like people take their opinion, and it's quite funny because I remember vividly, like back in the day, people were like, BitShares did this. This is dumb. And I was like, yeah, but there's so many things that have changed since then. Like, BitShares is on this weird network. Like we actually have smart contracts now. We can do much more interesting stuff. Like, it's easy to I think it's easy for the OGs particularly to become very cynical and be like, this doesn't work, right? And it's funny actually with FriendTech, because I was like, I actually tweeted this and I was like, don't hold it against FriendTech that Nader, the fucking grifter, who's now in jail, did this model first, right? But did it in an ultra scammy way. Like that doesn't mean the model's bad. Just because someone did grift using this model doesn't mean that it's broken. Now, in hindsight, actually, maybe that was a bad take, right? But to your point though, that's still now it's going to be even harder. Whatever the new in 6 months' time, the new FriendTech shows up, right, and goes to pitch you, right? Now you're open-minded, but let's say they go and pitch someone else, right? And they're like, no, like this, like FriendTech didn't work, BitClout didn't work. Like, sorry, I don't buy this. Like, it's not real. And it could really be a slight tweak on the model. Like the bonding curve on FriendTech was the dumbest thing. It was just the dumbest thing ever. And whether you could say that was intentionally dumb to extract value, or if it was just a random choice that turned out to be bad, that was the thing that didn't work. If you build FriendTech with a similar thing and maybe, better interface with a different bonding curve, and even bonding curves, right? People for a long time were like, bonding curves are dead. Doesn't work. And then FriendTech showed up and had a bonding curve and it really worked because bonding curves do work. They have this crazy viral kind of mechanism to them. So yeah, it's very interesting to me how easy it is for people to just be dismissive and cynical the longer you've been here as well.
Yeah, there's something called the idea maze by Balaji, when he was at A16Z startup school or something. But it's basically about you as a founder, you go through the idea maze. It's has it been tried before? Why did it not work? What did work? People really overfix on failures, I would say, as opposed to successes, because something could have failed for 1,000 reasons, but succeed for only really one. And so every time you try something new, the market's different, the team's different, the tech is probably different a little bit. And I mean, for example, RPCs we didn't invent RPCs on Solana. they existed. A lot of them actually, like 5 providers. And I was like, okay, well, I think they're doing a few things wrong here, and I think we can fix them. And I think we've done pretty well doing that. And there's a quote from my ancient Greek poem literature, which is about I think it's like Theseus or something. It's like the same man never steps in the same river, or no, it's a man never steps in the same river twice because he's not the same man and it's not the same river. And that's like a good mental model that I use, which is like I never trust if something has been done before that it won't work, or if it'll work. Like you need to always try to first principles it somehow.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one very interesting thing going back to FriendTech, and that is like FriendTech launched in a dark bear market. Like, you know, this podcast is called attention market, right? Like the attention game changes so quickly. Like the market changes so quickly. Like if you tried to do FriendTech, if FriendTech hadn't been done then, and you try to do it today, and this is where I think one reason you could say arguably that we're in a more bullish market, right? Like there's more attention, more noise. I think it would be harder to get cut through for FriendTech, but literally no one had done anything new for like 3 months when FriendTech came out, and people were desperate for something new to do and talk about, and it was the only thing. And like that timing just made it work, right? In a way that like it could have easily just been a flash in the pan thing that no one paid attention to if you try to do it today for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Maybe we've entered a new era where back kind of 2016, 2017, we went through this phase of rebuilding Web 2 traditional businesses on Web 3 rails. And everyone got really excited about that. We rebuilt trading interfaces as AMMs, and that was a really big thing. We rebuilt
art at one point. Remember that?
Yeah. I was going to say NFT marketplaces. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time rebuilding these kind of Web 2-esque or even traditional world businesses into Web 3. And then we started doing our own stuff. We started building Pump.Fun. We created an entire meme culture that really hasn't existed anywhere else. So are we continuing down that path, or do we still need to create more of this traditional real world infrastructure that just doesn't exist yet? Where do you guys sit on that?
I'm not sure if need is the right maybe premise. I think it'll happen regardless, as more people kind of understand what's possible with these networks. I didn't see Pump.Fun coming, to be completely honest. I don't really trade much, but I thought of it. At first, I was actually like, I saw some funny pictures because like Helios, it says "Go faster" is our slogan, and some guy made like a mentally handicapped version saying like "Go slower," that's like drooling with my face on it, and I was like, that's hilarious, and I was like laughing, and I tweeted, and it turns out it was a fucking coin.
And now you're going down.
Yeah. And I had the same thing with like Elizabeth Warren. It was like Elizabeth Horan or something.
Oh, I love that one. That was like the day that I turned up to like be like, all right, I'm like going deep into meme coins. I was like, I need to do this. The first token that popped up for me was Elizabeth Horan. And I was like dying laughing. And my wife was like, what are you laughing at? And I showed her and she was like, you're not a serious industry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's just like not possible to. I guess it is possible to predict those things, but like I just didn't see it coming. And so I think there's a lot. I'm a very weirdly philosophically optimistic person in terms of like creativity. Just read a lot of David Deutsch, and basically that's kind of like there is no fundamental limit for why there won't be more interesting use cases going forward. Like people will just think of things we haven't thought of, unless there's some law that says you can't, like a physics law or something, which like Solana's battling with, which is like, okay, you can only sync machines across the earth at such a speed, before physics literally stops you. And so like that's like a limit, so that you have to get creative around that. But for things like consumer apps and applications, like I think even, I mean, software development we thought was, relatively fix. You get a JavaScript framework, you code some shit, whatever. You learn like a new language that comes out like Go or Rust every X years. And then now there's like Cursor and like these LLMs, and they're crazy. Like I've saved like 20x the time. I actually got back to coding because I stopped coding as CEO because I don't have time. But I was like, I actually do have time if I code with AI now. So I built a bunch of shit. And so it's like, even that changed. And so it's like, I'd always be in crypto specifically, I'd always I'd recommend to be more optimistic than pessimistic, because there's no shortage of cynicism in crypto, where everybody's like, the price is down, everything sucks, fuck this place, it's a scam, Bitcoin is the only real true king, or Cardano, or like this has been tried before, like we just mentioned.
XRP, the standard, my friend. How could you not mention the standard?
I don't see them anymore. I'm not sure what happened, if they all blocked me or something, but I don't see them. It's the Algorand.
Maybe Musk is filtering them out of the timeline somehow. I agree. I haven't barely seen any XRP army people. They're all like 80 years old now as well. Like,
you had a good tweet about this actually. I think I referenced it in my podcast when you came on. Something like orphans and
liquefying or something.
Yeah. Compared to like XRP holders or something.
Yeah, something like that. It's funny to me. Like I very much agree with you, and I think my perspective on it is that like these new enabling technologies, whether it's AI or crypto or the web or computer, like it doesn't matter how far back you want to go, right? Like the combination of different things is where like really interesting stuff pops up, right? That like even something is like, we could call cars. There were car services. You could literally pick up a rotary telephone and like dial a number and a car would show up. It's just that was a really shitty service because we didn't have fucking GPS and you didn't have a phone in your hand. You couldn't walk out to that. Like they'd have to call you. And like, it's not like, to your point about, the washing machine and like, these things, like people did versions of these, but didn't have the right ingredients. Then all of a sudden you put the right ingredients in there and you've got Uber, and it's this like amazing use case. It's funny. I've got a very good friend of mine who's a psychologist, and he actually just messaged me, and I've been saying for ages, like, you should do a startup. And he's like, that I've seen you do startups for 20 years. It sounds like the most horrible existence ever. Like, no, thank you. And I'm like, it can't be worse than doing like 30 hours of therapy on people a week, surely. Right. Anyway, he hit me up today and he's like, I've got an idea for like an AI dating coach dating app. And I was like, huh, okay. And I started talking about it. And then like, as soon as that unlock came, I was like, wow, because he works on like dating anxiety, like specifically, and he's an anxiety specialist. And he wrote this book, and he's been working in this very niche area for a really long time and just has this like amazing domain expertise. And he's like aware of AI now, and the funny thing is oftentimes those domain experts are like not, writing Rust code, right? Like, and so like it takes a while for them to get connected. And he was like, I've got this idea of like this thing. And I was like, wow, that's, as soon as you unlock that, you're like, yeah, AI plus dating and like dating apps, like we saw this, there were like web dating apps, right? And, you go on a web platform and do OkCupid or whatever. And then it was like, now there's Tinder because you can see where people are and like, all these location-based stuff. And now you've got AI, and it's like how, dating is a thing that is perennial, right? Like humans are not going to stop dating each other. And you've now got this new enabling technology. Like something weird is going to happen with AI and dating for sure. And it was funny actually, because when he first sent me the message, I was like, so is your suggestion that we just have like an AI bot that you date instead of humans? And he was like, no, God damn it. I know that's not my suggestion. I was like, oh, okay. Because that would have been kind of cool. Like we just, go down the like her path, and you have an AI on your phone that there's
a few of those.
Yeah.
I actually got pitched one a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's like a waifu one, I think, like one of the anime characters. So it exists.
That's bullish. If you tokenize that shit, that's very bullish.
Apparently, the OnlyFans contributors are now plugging in their content and their text messages into the AI so that they can do replies at scale, like mass scale. Like it's turning into its own economy that like slight person-based AI reply, where it's not a complete robot. It's like it's got a little bit of personality, and the little bit of personality is like the videos that you've been scrolling in for the last 3 months, and then suddenly she's able to reply or text you. So it's and I look at it and I think like crypto is a real enabler of creative content. Like we are the biggest open creative community that has ever existed. You can literally build anything for any reason, wherever you want, and tap into millions of people all at the same time. AI is a proponent to allow anyone at scale to be able to do that, where the barriers to entry were really difficult. Like if you wanted to build a token before all of the tooling came along, it would actually it's pretty difficult. It's pretty obscure. You'd have to understand. You have to understand programming languages. But now, as you said, like we watched you build a Explorer.
Yeah, that was crazy.
In like 15 minutes, and that is very impressive. Like the way that AI is going, especially the intersection of crypto, it's going to be really big.
Who would have thought that
Those
it would
things are
take
crazy.
an AGI to actually build a good Solana block explorer? I didn't realize it was that intractable of a problem. It requires super intelligence.
It's actually much more difficult than people realize. We're going to release one soon that hopefully fixes the problem, or at least makes steps towards fixing the problem. It's called X-Ray. Probably will be released in like 2 weeks. But it's like on Solana, it's fucked because to store all that data, you'll go bankrupt. You can't do it at the seed stage. And so we didn't. At first, that was our actually first idea, but we're like, the economics don't work. Then we did another round, but the economics still don't work. And then we're going to do another round. And it's like, okay, actually now it can make sense. But yeah, I think the AI thing is super cool because I've always been like a generalist, and I always struggled with like the dichotomy between being a specialist and like people tell you to like go super deep in a single domain or be a generalist. And you look at like most entrepreneurs or even like the Renaissance guys, they're all kind of generalists, right? Like generally the ideas you get are from combining different ideas in disciplines. Like, I mean, Steve Jobs is like the obvious example of some weird art guy who like focused on calligraphy, makes the computers into art and stuff, but it actually exists everywhere. And so with AI, you can be more of a generalist, and I'm pretty excited for what that would mean for startups. And it also means you can just ship something at a few paying customers before diluting yourself way too quickly from VCs, which happens a lot. And so I'm pretty bullish on it. There's also like, it's like just starting too, which is the scary part. Like the context windows for what you pass into the AI are relatively short. But there's like a new company that just got funded that claims to have solved it, and they have like huge backers. And so once that's solved, like you have like an infinite context window, you can feed it whatever you want at runtime basically and get an answer. And we're actually going to add some AI to the Explorer, where it's going to be like you click the button on a transaction on Solana, and we make a few calls to some AI models, and it like tells you what it thinks is happening. So that is what it took. Literally, it took ChatGPT to come along to fix Solana Explorers.
Well, I think it's interesting because when ChatGPT came out and people were like, "Oh, everyone's going to build, apps on top of this," right? I was like, I'm skeptical. Like, I've got a lot of like historical reasons for concerns about platform risk, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't think you can build a sustainable business on top of ChatGPT. But now we've got all these open source tools and the ability to do like, fine tuning of things. Like, I think to your point, it feels like this has been a thing that's been available for 2 years, but it's really only been the last like 6 months that some of this stuff has come together. And so I think there's going to be a bunch of, and then the tooling as well, right? Like the ability to roll your own model and then fine tune it and, take your own inputs, take your own information, do, reinforcement learning, et cetera. Like that infra, is still not quite there yet. So.
Yeah. I'm going to actually build an L2 live stream. Cursor. I plan it for next week. So stay tuned for that.
I love it. That's awesome.
And you know what? You'll probably get traction because you'll spin it up, and you have enough status and enough reach that you'll get through to enough people, and that's actually what most of the market is missing. We call it an attention market because that's the real superpower. If you can build awareness and get people attracted to your thing that you're building, it's often not the case that the best piece of technology wins. It's just the guy with the loudest microphone. We've seen it so many times, like through projects and protocols all the way through to apps. So yeah, that might end up working. I wouldn't bet against you.
Yeah, it's not going to be like a serious sell time. I'm just going to do it to troll Ethereum. But there's a great quote in 0 to 1, which is a cliche book, but it is a good book by Peter Thiel. And he basically says, because his whole thing is about building monopolies, and it's about you can build a monopoly with superior distribution and like an undifferentiated product, but the converse is not true, meaning you can't build a monopoly with just a superior product, but like basically no distribution. And so that's actually one of the things that got me to start tweeting way back, not even way back in like 2021, where I had like 50 followers. And it's like, as a founder, you kind of need to go direct so that you have your own platform that you don't have to trust other people for distribution.
I say this all the time to portfolio companies. Like, if you are not playing the attention game as a founder, like of course there's a trade-off, right, of time, but like anytime, one of the heuristics that I use for assessing a founder is like, if you put a scoreboard up, I don't care what the scoreboard says, if you're not willing to try and be at the top of that scoreboard, no matter how arbitrary it is, you probably don't have the right mindset. Like, there's a level of like insanity of, I'm just going to win this game for the sake of winning the game, that I think, kind of keeps founders focused on, regardless of whether it's somewhat orthogonal to the thing that they're doing. Like, and Twitter's that. Like, if you can't get to like 10K followers, and then either you're not going to be a good founder because you don't have generalizable skills, right, where you can just figure out a game and win the game, or you're not trying. And that's also bearish. Like, if you're not willing to try to play that game. So I very much agree with that like building your own. And the other thing is, like, you can sit there and be like, oh, we've got our main channel, right? But like, no one pays attention to, like, I definitely don't follow the Helios. No offense, right? But I'm not following the Helios. I don't even know if you guys have one, right? Like, but I follow you. And so if you say some weird shit about Helios, I'm going to read it, right? But like, the main could tweet the most amazing, coolest thing. It's why interns, like the intern meta became so powerful, right? It's because no one pays attention to the main. So you have to have a schizo posting intern to actually get cut through.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, people don't listen to corporations, they listen to people. You can also see with like Elon Musk, where like Elon will say like, we never spend a dime on advertising or marketing, but it's like, that's because he is the marketing and advertising, and everybody listens to him, and whatever he says, he has cults around him. So yeah.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, I think we're coming up on time. I don't know if you've got any more rapid fire things you wanted to bring up, Igor. Otherwise, we can probably wrap it up.
The crowd loves opinions. So a couple of market outlook questions. Besides where we're heading, what are some of the new exciting narratives that you guys are hearing from the market today?
Well, I guess I can be Solana specific.
Absolutely.
But it really depends on who you are. So I'll tackle from a few angles. If you're just interested in blockchains going fast, then Fire Dancer is going to be pretty insane. It's already live on testnet. And really, it's just a battle against physics. And there's some other things coming around with it that I don't think anybody know yet, which more people will know at Breakpoint. But like, they're doing some, like, it's one of the most, I would go so far as to say it's the most performant open source project just in tech. Like, people are rewriting entire things, rewriting them in assembly, and by people who have done this for a living. And so if you're like a distributed systems nerd, things go fast nerd, that's going to be super exciting for Solana. I do think I'm still bullish on SocialFi. I think crypto has a good social layer, and if there's a team that can kind of figure out retention as opposed to just doing the first week of the protocol and then just fucking off. That would be, I think that would work pretty well.
The first week and then the first week again, in fairness, right? 2 first weeks. There were 2 versions. Let's not forget that.
And then I actually, this is like a moonshot, but I think mobile still needs to take off. Most consumer apps have to be mobile. Like that's just how users behave, and you're not going to get them to change their behavior very effectively. And crypto mobile is just not really there. It's like PWAs or some weird wallet UX. And so there's a Solana mobile phone coming out, but there's also other phones coming out too that I'm seeing now. Those are super hard to execute, but like something to tilt the industry shift to more mobile first, I think is going to be pretty helpful. I think, I mean, we already said it, but I think AI, like I was able to write Solana programs and interfaces in like 20 minutes live, unprepared, just after like a few Celsius shit posting. I don't even code anymore. And so if I can do that, then like, I wonder how many other like young, hungry kids could do that if they're like dedicated. And so I think that could, because like writing smart contract code or like crypto apps is not as easy as Web2 apps, obviously. Like there's overlap, but there's still differences. And so if that can be helped with an LLM, then I think that starts to get really interesting for the developer space and ultimately the app space.
Awesome. And Kain, what are you seeing from a Bodhi perspective?
You know, it's interesting. I feel like the SocialFi thing, you know, this is one of the challenges as well, right? Is that like we're not contrarian enough. And there was a moment where it's like, oh, FriendTech V2 is coming out. So, you know, there were some fast followers. And then it's like a combination of like, oh, that's already done, or someone's won that, or like it didn't work. There's like no middle ground of like, you know, either like they're dominating this and there's no way for anything else to work, or it's like, oh, it's bullshit and it's never going to work. And I think that there's, you know, like to your point, Mert, crypto is so social. We're making this little mini game as like the final. We've said this before, but like this is the final distribution mechanism for the Infinex patron sale, right? And it's basically a card game where you open packs of cards. The cards represent different crypto assets, and you have to play a hand each day. Right. So, you know, if you're bullish or bearish on a particular asset, you play that hand. And then the top people win patron NFTs, win access passes, patron tickets to get access to the sale. But one of the things that we noticed when we were playtesting it is it's so much more interesting when you're playing against your friends than like when you're just playing the game. Like even if you're playing the game to win and there's 100 random people, when you're in a channel talking about it, like, and I think that is one of the things that hasn't necessarily been tapped into as well this cycle, is like the little mini subcultures that like exist that you know, small Telegram groups of like 250, you know, even 500 people that share some interest. Like we haven't found a way to use those as like a viral vector. And so I'm really interested to see how this will go, because we're going to let you spin up your own mini comp against the people in your, like a fantasy football thing. Right. And I just think there's not been enough of that. And so I'm really bullish on this, and I really want to see how it goes in terms of like virality, right? Because all of a sudden you set up a game and you invite your 30 friends who otherwise maybe wouldn't have done it, because you know, you're like, I'm the moderator of this fantasy football game, and so I'm gonna, you know, tell you to use the platform I want you to use, not the one that, you know, like there's a kind of Schelling point that emerges where like the people who are doing the research on what's the, you know, do you use Yahoo or do you use, you know, some new thing that's popped up, right? Like FanDuel or whatever. So I think that tapping into those like mini networks and using them for virality is something that like SocialFi and FriendTech did this, right? Like the idea was like have an influencer, make a mini group, but like just execute it so badly. Like if you said you're going to execute, if you're going to do everything, like it's like the person who gets 0% on a test, right? Like there's a level of skill required to get that. Like you're not guessing randomly. Like you knew all the answers and you managed to get, like know the right answer to get the wrong answer, right? Like I don't know how you pull that off, but I'm bullish on like SocialFi games, and I'm bullish on them in particular on Solana. I think that like there's a level of like engagement and attention right now in the Solana ecosystem that if someone were to get a SocialFi app right in that way that tapped into these mini networks, these micro communities, I think it would just go insane.
Yes, I've been saying this.
Pitch me that. Pitch me that. Like seriously, if you're building that thing, find me at Breakpoint, find Mert. We'll be talking about beards. You can interrupt us. We don't care. If you're pitching us a weird SocialFi thing, come and interrupt us. I don't care what conversation I'm having.
Yes, agreed.
Incredible. Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. Thank you to everyone that was watching. Mert, we will see you next week in Singapore at Breakpoint. Guys, this has been awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Mert. Talk soon.